Alright, I'm gonna try and record this. Hey, what's going on, guys? This Game In here, and welcome to Steam and Steel. I've been trying to record this game for a while. Also, there's no face cam this time. No face cam this time. I'm gonna keep face cam off for this one because I want everything to be well seen and viewed. But this is my railroad. I've done quite a substantial amount of work on it. This is one that I play in my off time, but I wanted to talk about this game for like a long time, and I hinted at the fact I was going to record it, but I just I couldn't get around to it. So now I can. So what you're looking at here, we'll talk about the train cars first, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. What you're looking at here is my rail yard. This is actually not the original yard. It was revamped twice because I had to rebuild it to make it more efficient for me. Here you see our brake vans. These go at the end of your train. More often than not, I'm running with the one that's mostly in front. Um, Actually, very rarely is this back one ever used. I can't think of any time I've ever used it actually at the moment, but my friend Golden Fantasy, he's used it. Um, so you start out the game usually with actually I don't have them here, so I'll just show off the next closest thing. You usually start off with these stay flat cars. You start off with them, and you start hauling lumber and stuff, and we'll do some running here in a little bit, but I just kind of want to go over the basics. You start with hauling lumber and cordwood to the freight depot, which is the building right next to the purple brake vans. Um, and as you go, you upgrade and upgrade your cars. So you go from these stake flats to the heavy stake flats, the silver ones right here. There is no sprint in the game. I've noticed that. That's one thing I've wondered why there's no sprint. You eventually get these um, bulkhead flat cars. These hold a lot more cordwood than the 10-ton ballast trucks. These 10-ton ballast trucks are the ones that you kind of use at the start of the game. You use them at the start to get your bearings, and these are used to haul almost everything. You can haul coal, you can haul ore, you can haul grain, you can haul wood, you can haul rum, which we will get to. You can haul a lot of stuff with this, but eventually you upgrade to have individual cars for things. So these eventually convert into these. Buy them, obviously. The ore hauling department goes to these hopper cars. The grain hauling department goes to these 20-ton wagons here. And there's a few things they can't haul, and that's why you need the specialty. For example, this entire cattle train here is only for hauling cattle. Now, as far as I know, there's other livestock potentially in different other maps, but this is all livestock right here. These far buildings here, this setup here is all engine maintenance facilities. It is all engine and train car maintenance facilities. So if, say, something gets damaged or broken along the line, because you can wreck, you would use these buildings and you would back your locomotive or train cars up to them. You'd hit the interaction button and you'd repair anything that's in this area here. And I have doubled up in these two locations, so you can handle up to at least 8. I think it's up to 8 or at least up to 4 train cars per stall, and you can handle up to 4 big locomotives. Those are the ones with the tenders, which we will get to in a second. But there's also this space here. This space here, I don't even know if you can see my cursor, but this space here is used for maintaining tank engines. If we have all the other stalls full, we have the extra spillover stall. This building here you can buy. This is a engine, I believe. What is it called again? Hold on a hot second. Trainworks. It's called a Trainworks. If you buy this early game, it gives you a 20% discount on everything you buy. It's a lifesaver. I did not have this originally, so getting this is quintessential early game. I would say it's something that you would want to get early game or mid game, mid tier gaming. That's something you can, but it's crucial. It's a crucial element. There are actually two railroads on this map. There's this main railroad, this big hub that you see, and there's the subsidiary railroad. This is the GT network. This is called the Grand Trunk Network. We're still finalizing. Actually, I haven't fully decided what I'm going to call the railroad, but I have gone with a different aspect. Most people, when they name their locomotives in game, they're naming it. They put the railroad's name on them. I have not done this. Each locomotive has its own individual special name. Now, there's only two locomotives. Actually, there are three locomotives missing from this roster at the Roundhouse. The very first locomotive you get, your starting locomotive, and two specialty engines that are designed for one task each. They're designed for a task each. But to kind of show you the basics, we're going to go over here to Decade, the 10th locomotive on the railroad. You get something similar to this. This is a 2-2-2 wheel arrangement, and the one you get as a starter is a saddle tank. So you have a bunker, or as we call it, tender, here in the back, right behind where the engineer sits, and it's good for getting stuff around and moving things around. You know, basic necessities, things like that. But you eventually upgrade to this locomotive here. This is one of the. This is actually used to be the strongest engine in the game. It is not anymore. This is Patches. This is our third locomotive on the railroad. This was my bread and butter operating early days in the game because I've been around for a long time. I saw this being played by Heiss. If you know who Heiss is, he basically showed me the game through a video that I saw, and I was like, okay, I have to play this. So this was the breadwinner for the longest time, and I'll explain the tenders in a little bit. This engine here is engine number 5, Yellow Jacket. It's an 040. It's good for your medium tasks, and we'll go over the statistics of the classes of the locomotives and talk about that in a little bit. This is a well-rounded video, kind of talking about why I love this game so much. The fourth locomotive, this was a newer one, is Black Beauty here, an 042 tank engine. This is very good for high fast running and short trains. Very very good for that. I've tested every single one of these locomotives, and I know which ones, in my opinion, are the best and which ones are the worst. And we'll talk about that later. You've got Pannier over here, which is an 060 saddle tank locomotive. This engine is very slow. Keep that in mind. It is a slow locomotive, but it pulls. It does the excellent job of hard-working trains. It does not have distance on its side. Distance is not on its side, so it's good for short running. But if you want to haul something and you need an extra helper, this engine is really the good one for the job. We'll just keep going down over here to number 8, Samson. The strongest locomotive in the game, an 080 tank engine. This thing is really good to it just pulls the mail and then some. It does all of the work that you want it to do. It will do everything that you ask it to do. The downside is that it is a tank engine, so refueling is a necessity. You want to have the ability to refuel at any given point because it will run out of fuel. But the engine that is the brute, the main new head end, is number 11 over here. This is Big Bertha. She's a 260. She's a mogul, I believe. If I remember, 260 mogul. She is great. This 260 is great for doing all of the work you put at it. It will do almost everything. And if you run it right, it can do just about the same amount of work that Samson can if you run it correctly. If you run it right, it'll do the job. Now, Bluebell over here, number 2, this was actually the second engine on the game, but it had to get upgraded. I scrapped the original Bluebell, which I do not have any pictures of. If I find a picture, here it is. But it had saddles on the side here in the cab that held coal, and it worked. It did the job well, but eventually adding this tender behind it was quite useful. And a little interesting historical fact about this map, this tender belonged originally to Patches over here because Patches got upgraded to the what I call the long distance tender or triple axle. Moving down the way, we have Big John, an 044. Quite a quick boy, quite a quick locomotive. It does the work that you want it to, but it will struggle to pull heavy trains. It will absolutely struggle, but it's good for great distance hauling. It's a good fast runner. So if you have a light to medium train, even medium to heavy, it can pretty much do it, but it might need a little extra help. Now, Lucky Lady, the last engine on this side of the roundhouse before we jump to the problem child of the railroad, is an 060 with a tender. She's really good for what she does. She's very good for what she does. The locomotive is excellent for the tasks at hand. But the downside is it burns through fuel rather quickly. It functions great. It hauls the mail. It really does. But it will consume fuel like crazy if you don't run it efficiently. Which brings us to our big problem child, the sixth engine on the railroad, Big Red, the 440 American type locomotive. This is the fastest engine in the game. As far as I'm aware, it is the fastest current engine in the game as of making this video. But it had one of these two axle tenders originally, and it would eat through the fuel. It would consume all of the fuel in very short quantities if you're running it hard and fast. And this engine doesn't get used much anymore, purely because a lot of the lines, if we need a fast run done, we will use, and by we, I mean me and my brother, we will haul with number six. But we tend not to use number six as much as possible unless necessary. Now, to talk about the different tenders real quick, I'm actually going to bring up the shop here. The shop will tell us everything we need to know about the tenders, and this is where we'll go through statistics and stuff. So your default two axle tender, this is your very early game two axle tender that you can get. It has 2,354 pieces of coal and 56,000, I'm assuming, gallons of water. This is a very good tender. It's very good for the early game. It gets you where you need to go. It gives you that extra distance. It is beautiful. Now, the new two axle tender, as I believe, actually, we can bounce back and forth. Yeah, it does have a little bit more coal, so it gives you more of a distance, and it looks a little nicer, and it works like a charm. It does an excellent job. Now, do not take my prices, the money values that you see, do not take those at face value. They are 20% less than what you will be paying if you start the game. But this two axle tender does good for medium runs. It's very good for medium distances, or pretty much any tender, if you do it correctly, can last you a really long time. But the RS triple axle tender, the three axle tender, has 4,350 pieces of coal and 12,200 gallons of water. This tender, when it loads, because my game is slow, so bear with me. This tender is extremely good. This is the long. If you look at it, it is the long distance tender. It's the tender that will get you the farthest distance and the most work out of it. It's awesome. It's a great tender. Now, going into the locomotive classes, we will talk right off the absolute bat. We're going with the very first engine you get, which is, where is it? I believe it's the Class C. Yes, it is the Class C. The Class C, the 1A1T Class C. This is your basic bread and butter locomotive you start. Um, it's good. It's a good locomotive for what you get going. But if you look at the max power, it only has 9,769 tractive effort. I'm assuming that is tractive effort. So it's good for very early operations. But once you start getting into the heavier stuff, locomotive's not that good. Yeah, so this is what it would look like. And we do still have our original one in service. I have made it a rule that everything except for the original Bluebell has been scrapped. Every other locomotive is staying on the railroad and is going to operate throughout the railroad's history. The Class G, that is the 060, the 060, the first 060 that we got. This was the breadwinner. This was the strong locomotive with 29,809 tractive effort. Very, very good. Not very high top speed, but it was good for what you got. It was a great deal. The next engine in the list is the Class B. This 242 or 042, oh no, 040, sorry, my bad. This is your early game tender engine. This is a very good early game tender engine, hands on when you get the opportunity. Moving on to the Class F. The Class F is like the Class C, but it is cheaper. It's got more attractive power. It's got a tender, so it'll cost you a little extra in the long term or in the short term, but it will do more work than the Class C. Now, moving on, the Class N is that 060 saddle tank that we saw. The 060 saddle tank, again, great max power tractive effort. It is wunderbar. It is absolutely wonderful. It is gorgeous as a locomotive, and its max power is great. The 25,048 torque is great. Um, but like I said, this is good for like short distances, medium distances at best. If you really push it, it'll go medium distances. But really, this is like your switcher, your shunting engine, the one that the yard goat, if you will. The Class E, that's the O2. I believe this is the O. Yeah, this is the O2 O42. This is that saddle tank. Um, Great tractive effort again. The 20,572. Absolutely wonderful locomotive. It's good if you can get the money for it early game. It will save your Class C from a lot of the headache that comes with if you build hills, if you build steep inclines, or you're hauling heavy stuff. This would be a good banking engine. In fact, I have two of these on the railroad, and one of them is exclusively for banking or being a helper unit. Now the Class B2, that's the 060 that kind of looks like Big Red, the 442. Again, it is awesome. It's a great engine, 32,466. It is great, but it is a late game engine. It is a late game engine because the best tender to get this is the three axle tender. Three axle tender is the best one for this job. 100% for this locomotive. The three axle tender is the one you want. For the B class, the straight B class, that's the 440. Again, its max speed is almost 60. That has been upgraded because I remember its max speed being 45. So that has been upgraded. The pulling power is 30,650. If I am talking fast, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through these statistics quickly, but you can read through the statistics, pause the video, what have you. That can be done. You can also color the locomotives. Well, that you have this entire color spectrum here, so you can have anything from the basic red to a almost blinding pink to green to yellow to gray to black. You've got all the good colors of the locomotives. The J1, that's your 044. Again, good locomotive. Pulling power 73 or 37 270. That's very good. But again, this is a tender engine. It requires a tender. And again, it's fast, 32 miles. I'm guessing it's miles per hour. Don't quote me on that. It's a good locomotive, very good for what you do. But the J2 class, very late game locomotive, in my opinion. It is a late game locomotive along with the Class H, which we will get to. This is a great locomotive, very good with 39,796 pulling in. Max speed, very quick locomotive, does the work well. And then, of course, when this loads, we'll get to the last locomotive. There it is. That is the Class J2. And finally, the Class H. That's the 080. That's your big workhorse with a whopping 44,478. That is officially the strongest locomotive current of this video to exist on the railroad. It is very, very well done. Very, very well done. Now, this game does one thing beautifully. Steam simulation on this game is amazing. It is the best on Roblox. Hands down, no lie. It is the best Steam simulation I have seen. And I've played a lot of Steam games, like Steam Train games, simulators, what have you, on here. But we're going to take my bread and butter locomotive, the 11, purely because of two reasons. One, the table is already set for us, the turntable is set for us. And two, it's just one of my favorite locomotives. So you've got four controls down here. You have the whistle, the loco brake, no train brake, I'll explain that later, the throttle, and the reverser. Now to control them, you can use keyboard commands. W and S control the reverser. A and D control your throttle. And I do not believe the loco brake has a control. I am unsure if it has a control. I have tested. I do not believe it has a control yet. I think it might at some point. And the whistle you have to pull. Okay, that's a little bit shrieky in my opinion, but that's just because these are all European locomotives. They're all European. So to shovel coal into the locomotive, you click the shovel icon, and your character, very slowly, will begin to shovel coal. Oh, hello, I'm under the locomotive. Will begin to shovel coal into the locomotive. I'm actually going to turn the audio up slightly. And you can hear faint. Actually, you know what? Let's just go full beans. You can hear the character shoveling coal into the locomotive. And as you can see, the smoke is now getting darker because we're adding fresh coal into a fire, and it is causing the carbon to burn off on the locomotive, causing blacker smoke. And when the engine is running more efficiently, and you'll see that later, the locomotive will actually be um, steaming white. It'll have white smoke, and then if you work the engine hard enough, you will get the either the gray smoke, which is not optimal, but it is decent. And if you're me, who fires a locomotive, I have fired a locomotive before. I fired a real steam locomotive. You want to keep the smoke as white as possible while operating. It is the most efficient way to operate said locomotive. So as you can see, my character's still shoveling because I over-clicked. It takes about 18 clicks to fill the firebox up to the top, the absolute top. So if you want to cancel that, you just jump out. There's no like cancel button or anything for the shoveling or what have you. So for the head code, we're going to use my the American head code of light engine, which I don't think it is actually an American head code. It's just the one I created. You click on these headlights to change their color. Click once to turn them on. Click once to turn, or click twice to turn them red. Click 3 times, shuts them off entirely. So as the engine steams up, we're going to jump back in the cab here so you can see this. The bar, or the Kesseldruck, again, these are all European locomotives. None of them are American. There is an American design, but it's a little different. It's a European take on the American build. That's the 440. You can see the Kesseldruck here. The pressure is starting to build very slowly. Realistically, mind you, it is beginning to build. Now, you can thrash a locomotive all you want at high boiler pressures, but at low boiler pressure, you don't have the force, the compression of the steam to move the locomotive effectively. So you have to work around that. You have to work around the boiler pressure, the operation of the reversers. You have to manage your throttle. You have to be able to fire your locomotives effectively. Now, the smart move, and what Class 1 railroads in the United States will do, is until the safety pops, the engine does not move. We're not going to do that because I want to keep this video short and to the point. So we're going to add a few more scoops of coal. Going to take the brake off. We're going to just back the reverser down a hair. 3 blasts on the whistle for reverse, and then add just a hair of throttle. And because the engine is just now firing up, you'll see sparks coming out of the smokestack because we're working it. Now, if I throw the throttle wide open, you'll see the bar up here, the smaller bar, will jump. And this shows you the smaller gauge, which I'm not going to try and pronounce for the sake of not offending anyone. Shows you your steam chest pressure. If your steam chest pressure matches your boiler pressure, we're using just as much steam that is in the boiler. We're using the same pressure in the same location. At least that's my understanding. I'm still learning how to operate a steam locomotive. Firing one I can do. Operating one is a whole different story. So we'll back it up here. And we'll cut this off here and change this. Now, one setting I need to change right away under the admin. Where is it? Day-night cycle, enable les. I would like day-night cycle. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to back up and put coal in the tender. That's usually the first thing I'll do. Is when I fire up a locomotive, I will right away put coal in the tender. Because I want a maximum amount of coal when operating. Can I open this yet? No. So originally I thought they were going to add water to mechanics. I saw hints at like water levels and stuff like in the tenders and what have you. And that would be very interesting. But I'm going to pause it right here and I am going to assemble a train. A very short train. Okay, while we're assembling the train, I've set up the switches so that we can back up into the correct train that we're going to be taking, which will be a tanker train. But I also want to point out boiler pressure. If you look, the boiler pressure is now risen to about, I want to say somewhere in the 7 to 8 region, 78 psi. I'm just gonna blow the whistle like that crazy person. All right. Oh, there goes the safeties. The safeties are very loud in this game. I don't know if you can tell. They're very, very loud. So I might cut the audio in half now. But we'll back up slowly here. Pick up our tray. Now, if you see, the fire is now, the coal level, the firebox is getting 2. That's because we're burning through the coal. So if we shovel on a couple of scoops here, try not to rear grand southern these cars. That'll a little bit further back. Come on. There, that's what we wanted. Okay, so this is a very different system than the American system because the Americans used Lincoln Pen, I believe. I don't know what this coupling is called. I will have to look it up. I think it's a shark tooth coupling. I'm pretty sure it's shark tooth. But anyway, we'll keep the head code the way it is for the moment. And now we gotta look at it. The safeties are going off at 9 pounds. I'm assuming between 9 to 8 pounds. They'll go off for a little bit and then stop. So now, since we have a load on the train, I will show you what happens when you go full throttle with a load and things go wrong. The wheels will slip like massive. You have to plan your acceleration out. It is beautiful that they actually bothered to simulate the necessity to be like, okay, you have a load on your train, you can't just hammer it out. You have to plan out the throttle. You have to be like, okay, how far can I coast? How far can I roll? You know, what's the distance I have? Alright, so we'll throw on a little brake. This game is very multiplayer friendly. Like, if you are playing with your friends, it is much, much better playing with 2 people. Because you could have a brakeman, you could have dispatch if you even wanted, you could have a dispatch. Pretty much anything. The railroad, you can run it however you want. Uphill, down, uphill, slow, downhill, fast. You know, just tonnage you could do, or you could run it full-blown efficiency. You could run it like a class 1 if you really wanted to, with proper dispatching, proper signaling. I personally would love to see this game get some sort of like signage. I would love to see this game get signage, because if it got signs or something like, oh, you know, this is what you can do, this is what this is where you should go, this is where you can't go, things like that. I would love to see some level of here's signs to where to go. That would be really good. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to change the head code to my railroad's mainline straight head code, which is 3 headlights. Now that's not probably traditional. It's probably not the right European to do. But it's what I'm going to do. So if we get the train moving here, you can hear the wheel slip because I put it at full bore, full throttle, and I'm just going for it. The railroad is quite big. I've done a lot of work on the outside. Some things have been rebuilt, some things have changed. So this is not the railroad I started with, but it is the railroad. Okay, I should say, it's the railroad I started on, and I've improved it as I went. So now we're going to get going up this branch of the railroad. And as you see, when we pick up speed, the upper bar, the smaller tip, will be. pressure valve gets smaller because we're running down the line, we're operating. But the more I add throttle, the more steam I send to the pistons and the faster we go. And also, you'll see that I have a shovel and pull because obviously we're burning through it. Now, the further the reverser is brought, I'm going to start coasting. The further the reverser is brought towards neutral or center, the less steam you'll use. The further up you go, the more steam you use, and it actually simulates the bark of the locomotive as it goes up the railroad. You know, if you're working the engine really, really hard, you will hear that bark, the chuck, 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 it's a massive bark but if you're working it very lightly, you can just hear that the pistons are working against air. They're just pushing air out, and it's creating that draft. Now, the reason why there's a loco brake and not a train brake is very simple. This is very old, like 1800s steam locomotive design. So there's no air brakes. There's no air brakes to stop the train, no matter, so you have to compress your drive wheels, and that slows you down. And when you do that, your wheels will squeal because you're compressing an iron brake shoe, or I'm assuming back in this time period, it would be a wooden brake shoe. It might have been metal, I'm uncertain. But you have to clamp a brake shoe onto your spinning wheels, and that is how you stop. So now we're coming up here to the distillery, one of the breadwinner businesses. So each company, quote unquote, it's more like an industry actually. Each industry you go to has requirements to work. For example, say a lumber mill is going to require logs. The distillery requires cordwood and grain to make rum. These red icons here, the iron ingots and pipes, those are bonus things that you can deliver a bonus to the company. No safety valves are going to inflame, but that's okay. So let's say you want to load the rum. So you press E, and you'll see it takes $30 out of my liquid cash to load them. Now if you want to load them faster, you just rapidly tap E a couple of times, and you'll see it starts loading the rum a little faster per tick, and you'll see that the rum is being loaded in tonnage, or tons, T. And so we have 8.4 tons here, there should be 8.4, yep, 8.4 there, there's 8.4 there, and we have one more thing to go. Got 115 runs. So we're gonna make this train, we're gonna make bank on it. As you can see, because of the day-night cycle, the sun is setting, so we need them headlights on. We're going to just pull up a little bit here. Not going to pull up too quick. We just need enough to kind of ease that last tank car. You can load up to 3 cars at a time per industry. And if you're really good at it and they're small enough cars, I think you can load up to 4. But I've never tested loading up to 4 on one business. So as you can see, that cost us quite a bit of money. I think we were like at 31,000 something, and now we're at 2811. So when we get to the freight depot, we're gonna sell it off. So to start the run, we'll stock up on a coal and firebox. Let our brakemen know what we're doing, even though we don't have one. And now you can hear that because I've got the reverser up a ways, chuff is different. Chuff is a little more throaty. I put it all the way up, the chuff gets very throaty, and you can see we start eating through steam because we have almost no pressure. We're using all the force of the steam to get as much torque out of the locomotive as possible. But if we bring it down, the steam chest equalizes to the boiler a little more. If you bring it really up close to center, you get more speed, less power. But the faster a steam engine goes, the more efficient it is because it's burning hotter coals, and it is creating more heat, which is creating better combustion, which creates a better building steam pressure. At least, if I'm right about that, I should be. But there's a lot of things on steam locomotives that are kind of like the sciencey details that I don't fully get, but I understand the premise of it. Now, since we're coasting and we have a full firebox, you can see that the smoke is rather gray. That is because we're burning coal, but we're not really working the engine. So here, we're going to throw this switch right in front of the engine like a dummy. You're going to hear the wheels squeal in anger and protest. We'll get a little bit more steam going. We'll let our brakeman know we're stopping. I believe that's a rear grand signal of station stop. But we'll come up on here. The freight depot, I know for a fact you can drop off at least 4 cars if you plan it right. We'll apply just a little brake, rolling just a bit, and full brake. Oh, wait, didn't signal. Okay, the train could do jump, so signal, that was stopped. And then we drop it off. So you would click the car, and it makes $52 a barrel. I believe it's per barrel, or per ton in this case. And so now we're dropping off 52 times 4 per car. And so you can see our money is just skyrocketing now because we're delivering this product. And we're probably actually going to crack 32,000. And yep, there it is, 32,000 right there. I'd even crack 33,000. Yeah, we did. We cracked 33. But we're definitely... we might crack 34. Not sure, though. I don't think we will. Nope, we didn't crack 34. That's okay. So what I will do next, since this is a short video, just kind of a basics of the game, I will leave my brake van out on the main, because this line is only track 1 of the main line. This is the track that we took going back. That was the second main line. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and put the train away. Now, we didn't do a lot of work with the locomotive, but we still did enough to make at least a 30, 20, 15 minute video. So we'll see how it goes. So we'll get going here. We'll come up to the yard switch here. And the switches are throw switches, but they're not spring-loaded. So I don't think these switches, in theory, would be the right ones. They might be, historically. Unsure. We'll throw the brake on there. And we're going to try and cut out the signals as much as possible here. Cut out the middleman. So now that we're going into the yard, based on the rules that I have written for this railroad, we're going to now take these headlights and turn them off. We're going to jump up here. We're going to put the engine in reverse, add a little throttle, and we'll start putting this train away. Now I'm going to try and fire as little as possible because I want to put the locomotive into the shed with as little fire as possible so that it'll inevitably die out. Now, I would love a blowdown feature in this game, some sort of, like, lever or something that you can crack open on a locomotive and be like, hey, you know, you're done, you don't need this boiler pressure. And that would be so cool. That would be so wonderful. But it is not the case right now. And that's okay. Probably because these locomotives didn't have them at that time. But I will have to do more research into the 1880 locomotives or the 1800s locomotives. I'm almost certain that they had some sort of way to clean out the boilers. I'm pretty sure. But it could be also very difficult to animate, so no problem there. I have no quarrels with that. Slightest. So we're going to come up here. We're going to throw that switch. We're going to throw in the brakes. Throw the reverser into this back way. We'll get some real slick there because, whoopsies, I screwed up. And we'll go pick up the brake van, we'll put the brake van away, and then we'll service the locomotive. I don't know if servicing is yet implemented at the time of this video, but I'm hoping that servicing is implemented, because it'd be very cool to kind of show that element off. Because that's an element I'm looking for. Oh, excuse me, sorry, I'm soda. So we're going to come here, we're going to couple into that brake van a little rough. Actually, hang on, wait a minute. We'll do something else first. Hold on. So what I'm doing now is I've decided that since we've got tank cars to the right, we'll take a quick and sharp jaunt just to run the locomotive. It's been a while since we've operated it. We'll take you up through the pass over here towards the farmland, show you the branch line. I was thinking about doing this in a separate video, but I've decided that this would be a lot more entertaining. So we're coming up to this farm up here, where there is a place called Interchange. There's a place called Interchange. And you'll see it right here. There's an interchange point in the farm. There's this siding here that allows train cars to be stored for said interchange point. And there's this little bar here, this little short front siding to store locomotives. If we had to interchange with this short line over here, we would put whatever load we have in here, whatever goods, whatever it might be, and the locomotive would come down, hook into that, come back down, and back down through interchange. So we're gonna take. I normally will not take the big engines up here unless it's like a dire emergency for said railroad, because the little line up here, which I have affectionately named the Rio Grande Northern, you don't really need big engines on the line. It's supposed to be just a little railroad to exist and have fun with. And we'll take now we'll take a look at the railroad, and we'll probably cut this video down quite heavily of the nuisance and what have you. But let's go take a look at the Rio Grande Northern. So here you can see this berm that is part of the connection point between the Rio Grande Northern head railroad point and interchange. And so the railroad is a lot more poorly constructed. I did not do a very good job when it came to laying the track for this railroad. It was poorly built. Some would say limes would be thrown into the situation here. But this whole point is supposed to be just a scenic, short railroad to exist on the line. Plenty of resources that are in this area can be used. We have use for this line. I just don't have enough people to play with on a regular on the game to operate the line consistently. If I had more people to run the Rio Grande Northern, I would be 100% operating 2 railroads at the same time via dispatch systems. So here is this little forest camp sitting off here. This is we're actually going to hit the brakes pretty hard here, because there's a load here sitting here that we're waiting for someone to collect and bring down. But these are the starting cars that you usually get. These are the smaller ones you get. And you can see that there are 2 locomotives sitting here. And there's also these flat cars. These flat cars are very useful in the game too. But over here, this is our pride and joy, our historical engine, old reliable, the #1. She sits over here and she works the Rio Grande Northern. But there's a caveat. She's not the only #1 on the railroad, because over here we have Rio Grande Northern #1. So at some point, Old Reliable will be retired, but not scrapped. She will be placed into emergency storage in case something goes awry. Now, if the Rio Grande Northern is not profitable, and I don't see that we're going to be using the Rio Grande Northern as much as I would like to, I will probably sell off the Rio Grande Northern #1 because it's a throwaway engine. But we're going to go up the line here. We're actually going to take it rather easy, because the line is steep. There are a few grades on here that you're going to look at and be like, oh my word, a locomotive can handle that? Iffy. They can handle it iffy. So this is the first part of the line, the main line of the Rio Grande Northern that we're coming up to. We zoom out so the safety valves aren't blowing in my ear. This part is one of the worst parts of the line, because I didn't want to build a bridge here that was just stupidly steep and annoying. So I built like this almost, I think it's like a 3.5%, 4.5 maybe. Steep as all get out gradient. So hauling the logs down this area is a roller coaster of a ride. And since there's 2 lines, you could probably get 2 trains to roll down. Again, interchange, you could pick something up from there, and that hill is going to be even more of a hassle. So there's a lumber camp up here that we're approaching, and we'll approach what is a terribly designed replica of the Georgetown Loop in Georgetown, Pennsylvania. I believe it's Pennsylvania? It could be Georgetown, Colorado. But the Georgetown Loop is somewhere along this line, if I remember correctly. And most of this is single trackage. There's not a lot of double trackage. The rest of the line, the main line, the big main line we saw was all double track. So this is the lumber mill. It has two slots, two sidings, sorry, or the holes, that will allow you to place lumber trains here. You can also pick up beams and lumber here, but you can drop off logs and what have you. This area. And then there's this area. This was originally going to be the headquarters of the Rio Grande Northern, and I tried. I tried to build an efficient yard in this area. If you guys have any suggestions for what I should build in this location that could help the Rio Grande Northern, or help even the main line in general, I am all ears. But this grade is a little steep. It's not the worst on the railroad. It's not. The worst is yet to come. But the railroad does have this one little passing lane, this hole, as it's called on the railroad, is in the hole. Because you pass on that side and the main line is here. So we click and clack our way down here. Again, we're trying not to derail as best as we can. Then you come up here to this farm that has a Y. If you're only going to the farm, you can back into the Y, turn around, go back up, and drop stuff off at interchange. And it saves so much hassle. It really does. But if we need this farm, it's here. We already have one, as you saw, back at interchange. So we don't need this one, but let's say that one runs out of supplies and we can't get to the other one that's on the main line. We go to the Rio Grande Northern. Rio Grande Northern will take care of it. So then again, we're back to single trackage here. This is where we can really pick up some speed, get really going. And as you can see, the smoke is now white. The smoke is now white. We're actually going to raise the reverser up a bit so that we're using a little more steam. But then here you see that there's another hole here for trains, because again, it's just a short line. It's not for heavy hitting railroad operation. Coming up around this corner here, we have the tannery, which is on the main line, but there's a second interchange point here. And this is where things get a little interesting, because this interchange point is right next to Devil's Advocate, as I consider it, because I wanted to go through the mountain, didn't work, and so my only choice was to go over with a whopping 4% incline gradient. And this takes 2 of the little engines to do, sometimes 3, based on the train. It's a lot of work, but here is this Georgetown Loop rebuild, I guess you would call it. And I designed this purely because I did not want to fight the steepness of this part, which makes no sense that I just fought that steepness. Why not fight it again? And I chose to instead build this loop of a line that slowly brings the trains down. And yes, all the goods and everything, I have tested this, can come through this area. They can. So, providing that we need to, say, take an exchange train up this way, we can. So, we're now in one of the tunnels. One of only a few that are not on the map, actually. Cut the brakes. Cut the brakes. Okay, is it brackets? What was the brakes? I know there was a command for the brakes. I can't remember at this moment what those commands were. But you come off of the Georgetown Loop, you have another hole. So again, because my plan was to get a lot of work. Oh, what happened here? There is a wall that has randomly spawned in this passing loop. I don't know if you see that, but this wall is just shy of the line. We can't have that. We can't have that. So now I get to show you guys the building mechanics. So the build mode is really interesting because it'll show you the elevation and gradient of the tracks. It'll show you pretty much all of that stuff. But one thing you can do is you can change the grade of the track. So how many feet per mile or how much elevation per feet you want. You can change the curve. So if I set this curve to 0, the track is going to just go straight. It's going to go straight as far as I want it to go. if I give the curve, say, a 200% change, in about 200 feet, it'll be roughly about over there. It'll change. You can have it as a negative too. So let's say negative 200. You can then have a negative curve that goes that way. We don't want the curve on. We want to place the line as close as we can here. And yeah, you just click and it builds the track. We do want a 0 grade on this. That's the only thing we do want. So we'll connect it up there like that, and that will make that track flat. It'll make it as flat as it can, unless there's stuff that gets in the way or what have you. Now, in the build mode, what doesn't make any sense is that you have the re-rail mode, which I get it, it's part of track, so it makes sense. But this is in case, let's say, something falls off the rails, or God forbid you have a wreck. It's there. So I just realized how long this is going to be, so I'm probably going to down quite a ways. Or I might even altogether reshoot it. But we're coming up to the end of the short line, right at this slaughterhouse. That's the end of the line. We'll just book it real quick here. So I actually might just upload this thing as one whole video. But this is the end of the short line of the Rio Grande Northern. It stops in a mountain. Just straight up stops in a mountain. And at this point, you can offload whatever train cars you don't need. You can offload them here, and you can turn your train around, and then you can shove everything back the way you came. So as you can see, it is now getting quite late here on the railroad. We're going to service the locomotive, put her away, and we're going to call it a night. But that is basically Steam and Steel in a nutshell. The very simplistic of it. It is a wonderful game. I highly recommend playing it. I will say, though, and I'm saving this to the end because I don't want people to get freaked out or anything. And it is kind of a bad thing I save it to the end. But this is a paid game. You do have to pay into it. I believe it is 250 Robux to pay into the game. But for what you're getting, it is worth the money. It is well worth the money. I'm not going to show putting the engine to bed or into its berth. I'm not going to show that because it's a boring process. It's really just backing the locomotive up and putting it away. But thank you guys so much for being really patient on me getting a gaming video out. I've had a lot of things going on in my life. I may talk about it in a different video. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video and you want to see more videos like this, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button down below, hit the notification button, become part of the gamer team. Also, please go check out my editor, Violet Phoenix. She will be in the description. Go check her out. Awesome what she does with most of my videos. This one's going to be unedited, but she does some awesome work. And the reason it's going to be unedited is because I want to show off everything the game has to offer. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you next.